I grew up thinking he was my uncle, until I found out the truth that destroyed my family. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, where everybody knew everybody else's business except, apparently, my own family's. Looking back now, I realize the red flags were everywhere, scattered through my childhood, like breadcrumbs leading to a truth I was never meant to discover. But when you're a kid, you don't question what you're told. You just accept it. My mom, Claire, had me when she was pretty young. That was the story I'd always been told. She was 21, single, and working at jobs to keep us afloat. My grandparents stepped in to help, and my mom's younger brother, my Uncle Ryan, was always around too. He was only 5 years younger than Mom, so more like an older brother to me than an uncle. He lived with us off and on, crashed in our basement when he didn't feel like being at my grandparents'. And for most of my childhood, he was a constant presence. I adored him. Ryan was the cool uncle who let me stay up late watching scary movies, taught me how to throw a baseball, and slipped me candy when Mom wasn't looking. He was laid back, funny, and never treated me like a dumb kid. I remember thinking I was so lucky to have him around, because other kids I knew barely saw their uncles except at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Still, there were weird things that didn't add up, but that I brushed aside because I didn't know any better. For one, Ryan and my mom fought a lot. Not normal sibling fights. Not about who ate the last slice of pizza or who was supposed to do the dishes. Their arguments were heavier, laced with a strange intensity. Sometimes it sounded almost like Mom was scolding him, like she was his parent, not his sister. I'd catch snippets when they thought I wasn't listening. You need to take responsibility. I've already done more than you think. You don't get to just walk away. At the time, I thought it was about money. Ryan was always bouncing between jobs, never really settling anywhere. I figured Mom was nagging him about being irresponsible. But even as a kid, I felt the tension was different, deeper, like they were fighting over something bigger. Then there were the questions I used to get from other adults, family friends, neighbors, even teachers. Wow, your uncle spends a lot of time with you, huh? Your mom and brother are really close, aren't they? Once, when I was maybe 8, a woman at church leaned down and whispered, "You've got your uncle's eyes." I remember smiling proudly, not understanding why. My mom stiffened beside me and quickly changed the subject. By the time I hit high school, the whispers had started. Small-town gossip never really dies. It just mutates. I'd overhear kids saying things like, "You know his uncle's actually his dad, right?" Followed by laughter. I pretended not to care, but inside, I burned with confusion and anger. Were they just being cruel, or was there some truth buried in the cruelty? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The resemblance, the constant presence, the weird way Mom and Ryan fought, the secrecy around my father. Still, I pushed it down. I wanted to believe my mom. I wanted to believe I wasn't the product of some twisted family secret. But deep down, I knew the truth was waiting for me. And one day, I'd find it. High school is supposed to be awkward for everyone, but mine felt like one long identity crisis. I didn't just wrestle with grades, crushes, and fitting in. I wrestled with the annoying, unspoken question, who the hell is my father? By the time I was 15, the whispers about my family weren't just whispers anymore. They were full-blown rumors that followed me everywhere I went. His uncle is actually his dad. That's why they look the same. His mom's a liar. The first time I heard it directly was during freshman year. I was at my locker when a kid named Brent smirked and said, "Hey, do you call him Uncle Dad or Daddy Uncle?" The hallway erupted in laughter. I slammed my locker and shoved past him, pretending I didn't care. But that night, I cried into my pillow. I hated that the rumor sounded plausible. I hated that when I looked in the mirror, I saw Ryan staring back at me. At home, things were tense. Mom worked long hours, and Ryan floated in and out of the house like a ghost who never quite left. Sometimes he'd be there every day for weeks, helping with dinner, watching TV with me. Other times he'd disappear for months, no explanation given. When I asked Mom where he went, she'd say, "Don't worry about Ryan. Focus on yourself." But I couldn't stop worrying about him or about the connection we shared. When Ryan was around, he treated me more like a son than a nephew. He came to my baseball games, shouting louder than any parent in the stands. He helped me with my first car, teaching me how to change the oil and swap out a flat tire. He even gave me advice about girls, awkward and clumsy though it was. Those moments filled me with warmth and confusion. Why was he stepping into a role that should have been filled by my real dad? And why did it feel so natural? One night, after a game, we sat in his beat-up truck in the parking lot, eating fast food. I couldn't help myself. "Ryan," I said, my voice shaking, "Are you my dad?" The fries froze halfway to his mouth. For a second, he didn't breathe. Then he forced a laugh and shook his head. Kid, I'm your uncle. Don't let those holes at school get in your head. But the way he said it to defensive made my stomach twist. Everything shifted the summer I turned 16. It was late July, and Mom had asked me to clean out the attic. I hated that attic. It was hot, dusty, and smelled like mildew. But I climbed up, grumbling, and started sorting through boxes. That's when I found it. A leather-bound journal, old and worn, tucked inside a box of baby clothes. I opened it, curious. The handwriting was Mom's. My heart raced as I skimmed the entries, realizing they were from around the time I was born. Most of it was about fear of being a single mom. Fear of what people would think. Fear of a future she didn't feel ready for. But then I found the entry that changed everything. Ryan keeps saying he'll step up, but he's just a kid too. How can he be a father when he's only 17? Mom and Dad say we'll pretend he's just the uncle. They say it's better this way. Better for me. Better for him. Better for the baby. But I don't know if I can keep the secret forever. I dropped the journal like it had burned me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. I read the line again and again, as if it might change if I stared long enough. But it didn't. Ryan wasn't my uncle. He was my father. I stormed downstairs, clutching the journal. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. What is this? I demanded, slamming the journal on the counter. Her face drained of color. The knife slipped from her hand and clattered onto the cutting board. Where did you find that? She whispered. In the attic. So it's true. Ryan's my dad. She closed her eyes, her shoulders sagging. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, she said hoarsely. Ryan is your father. The words shattered something inside me. Why didn't you tell me? I shouted. Why did you lie my whole life? Why did you make me feel like some abandoned mistake? Mom sobbed, reaching for me, but I jerked away. I was so young. She cried. I didn't know what to do. My parents thought it would ruin all of us if people knew. Ryan was just a teenager, barely more than a child himself. We thought it was better this way. Better for who? I yelled. Not for me. The fight ended with me slamming the door and running into the night. I didn't stop until I reached the baseball field, where I sat in the dark, gasping for air like I was drowning. I didn't speak to either of them for 2 days. When Ryan finally showed up, he found me in the garage, tinkering with my bike. He leaned against the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. She told you, didn't she? She didn't have to. I found the journal. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I wanted to tell you. God, I wanted to 100 times. But every time I tried, your mom begged me not to. She thought it would mess you up. It did mess me up, I snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like growing up thinking your dad abandoned you? Hating someone who doesn't even exist? Ryan's eyes filled with tears. I was 17, man. 17. I didn't know how to be a father. I barely knew how to be a person. Your grandparents said it would be easier if you just thought I was your uncle. And I went along with it. Because I was scared. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. But most of all, I wanted him to hug me and tell me it wasn't my fault. Instead, I whispered, so what am I supposed to call you now, Dad? He winced. Call me whatever you want. Just don't hate me. But in that moment, I wasn't sure I could do anything else. Secrets don't just sit quietly in the dark. Once you've dragged them into the light, they demand attention, they demand explanation, and they tear through every fragile bond you thought you could rely on. After finding out Ryan was my father, my family's world didn't just shift, it exploded. The days after the revelation were the most tense I'd ever experienced. Our house felt like a minefield. Mom tried to act like everything was normal, cooking dinner, folding laundry, asking about my homework, but her eyes were always red from crying. Ryan showed up more often, like he was suddenly trying to make up for years of absence. But every time I looked at him, a storm built inside me. I didn't know who he was to me anymore. My uncle, my father, a stranger who had lied to me my whole life. The first real confrontation happened at the dinner table. I was pushing peas around my plate when I muttered, so, Uncle Dad, you want to tell me what it's like lying for 16 years straight? The fork slipped out of Mom's hand and clattered onto her plate. Ryan's face went pale. Don't, Mom said sharply. What? Don't tell the truth. I snapped. I think I deserve to say whatever I damn well please. Ryan slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. That's enough. No, I shouted back. You don't get to tell me what's enough. You've never been a father to me. You don't get to start now. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom was sobbing, Ryan's jaw was tight, and I stormed upstairs, slamming my bedroom door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. A few days later, I confronted my grandparents. I drove over to their house, the journal tucked under my arm like a weapon. When I walked in, Grandma was baking cookies, the smell of chocolate chips filling the air. She smiled at me until she saw the look on my face. "You knew," I accused, dropping the journal on the kitchen table. "You knew Ryan was my dad." Grandma froze. Grandpa looked up from his newspaper, his face hardening. Neither of them said a word. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked. "Why did you let me grow up believing my dad was some nameless deadbeat?" Grandma's eyes filled with tears. "We were trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed bitterly. "From what?" "The truth." Grandpa sighed heavily. "You were a child. Ryan was a child. Claire was barely more than one. We made a decision we thought was best for everyone. The world isn't kind to stories like yours. We didn't want you to grow up branded by it." "Branded?" I spat. "You mean judged? You didn't want the neighbors talking. You didn't want people looking at you differently. This wasn't about protecting me. It was about protecting yourselves." Grandma reached for me, but I stepped back. The betrayal cut too deep. I left before they could say anything else. Of course, in a town as small as ours, secrets don't stay secrets for long. Once the truth came out between us, it didn't take long for others to sniff it out. Maybe Mom confided in someone. Maybe Ryan let something slip. Or maybe people just put the pieces together on their own. By the time school started up again, the whispers weren't whispers anymore. "Did you hear? His uncle's actually his dad." Gross. His mom must have been white 16. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't escape it. Even my closest friends didn't know how to act around me. Some avoided me altogether, like my family's scandal was contagious. Others were curious in the worst way, asking invasive questions like, "So, do you call him dad now?" It was humiliating. I felt like a freak show. After that, I pulled away from everyone. From Mom, from Ryan, even from my friends. I stopped going to baseball practice. I skipped classes. I spent hours driving aimlessly just to get out of the house. One night, Mom tried to stop me as I was leaving. She stood in the doorway, blocking my path. "I know you're angry," she said softly, "but please don't shut me out. I'm still your mother." I laughed bitterly. "Are you, or are you just my sister?" The look on her face nearly broke me, but not enough to stop me from brushing past her and slamming the door. I wasn't ready to forgive. I wasn't even ready to understand. Ryan tried to. He showed up at one of my games even though I'd quit the team weeks earlier. He sat on the bleachers waiting for me, a look of hope on his face. When I walked by, he called out, "Son." "Don't call me that," I snapped, not even stopping. He caught up with me, his hand gripping my shoulder. "Please, just let me explain. Let me try." I turned on him, fury boiling over. "Explain what?" "That you were too much of a coward to be my dad. That you let me grow up hating some ghost because you couldn't man up. I don't need your excuses." Ryan's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw him cry. But I couldn't find it in myself to care. Not then. The breaking point came one night when everything boiled over at once. Mom, Ryan, and I were sitting in the living room. The tension was unbearable, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. Finally, I exploded. "I don't even know who I am anymore. Am I a mistake? Am I just some dirty secret you all tried to bury?" Mom sobbed. "No. You are my son. You are loved." "By who?" I demanded. "By the mom who lied to me. By the dad who pretended to be my uncle. By the grandparents who covered it all up." Ryan stood, his voice breaking. "By me. Always by me. I may have screwed up, but I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air, raw and desperate. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But my anger wouldn't let me. So I walked out again. That night, I sat in my car under the stars, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. My whole identity had been shattered. The people who were supposed to protect me had betrayed me. And yet, deep down, a small, stubborn part of me still longed for their love. I hated that I couldn't stop caring. The summer after high school graduation, I left home like the house was on fire. I didn't care where I ended up, as long as it wasn't under the same roof with Mom and Ryan. I got into a state college 3 hours away and practically sprinted out the door. On move-in day, for the first time in my life, I thought I could breathe. New town, new people. Nobody whispering about Uncle Dad. Nobody giving me pitying looks or asking invasive questions. Just me, reinventing myself. Or so I thought. The thing about running away is that you take the baggage with you. It doesn't matter how many miles you put between yourself and the problem, it's still sitting on your chest every night. When you try to sleep, I told myself I'd start fresh, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time someone asked about my family, I stumbled. "Oh, it's just me and my mom," I'd say quickly, avoiding eye contact. If they asked about my dad, I shut down completely. My roommate noticed. His name was Derek, a loud, easygoing guy who never seemed to take life seriously. One night, after a few beers, he asked, "Dude, why do you get all weird whenever someone mentions their dad?" I almost told him. Almost. But then I imagined his reaction, the disgust, the disbelief, the endless questions, and I laughed it off. "It's complicated," I said. "Long story." "Fair enough," he shrugged. And just like that, the subject was dropped. But the truth gnawed at me like a parasite. Sophomore year, I met Emily. She was smart, funny, and had this way of making me feel seen without me having to say a word. For the first time, I thought maybe I could build something normal. We started dating. She met my mom once when she came to visit, and the two of them got along surprisingly well. But I never introduced her to Ryan. I didn't even mention him. At first, it didn't matter. But as our relationship deepened, so did her questions. "You never talk about your dad," she said one night as we lay in bed. "Is he around?" The panic hit instantly. My chest tightened. My throat went dry. I forced a smile. "No. He left before I was born. Never met him." It was the same lie Mom had told me for years, and now I was passing it on like a cursed heirloom. Emily frowned but didn't push. "I'm sorry," she whispered, kissing my forehead. I felt sick, not because of her pity, but because of the weight of the truth pressing against my ribs. How could I love someone fully if I couldn't even be honest about who I was? I avoided going home as much as possible. Thanksgiving, Christmas, summer breaks, I always found excuses. Work, finals, road trips with friends. Anything to avoid sitting at that dinner table again. But eventually, guilt wore me down. Junior year, I went home for Thanksgiving. Walking through the front door was like stepping back into a time capsule of everything I hated. Mom rushed to hug me, her eyes brimming with tears. Ryan hung back, awkward and silent. Dinner was excruciating. The silence between Mom and Ryan was deafening. And every time I looked at Ryan, I felt the old anger bubbling up. But beneath the anger was something worse, longing. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and say, "Fine, you're my dad. Be my dad." But I couldn't. The wound was too raw. That night, I overheard Mom and Ryan arguing in the kitchen. "He still hates me," Ryan said, his voice breaking. "He doesn't hate you," Mom whispered. "He has every right to," Ryan replied. I failed him. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down my face. Because as much as I wanted to hate him, I knew he was right. And I knew I hated myself even more for still wanting his approval. By senior year, Emily and I were talking about the future. Marriage, kids, building a life together. That's when the cracks finally split wide open. One night, she asked, "What kind of dad do you think you'll be?" I froze. Images of Ryan flashed through my mind, teaching me baseball, helping me with my car, crying in front of me. I thought about all the years lost, all the lies, all the pain. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaking. "What if I'm like him?" "Like who?" she asked gently. And before I could stop myself, the whole story spilled out. The journal, the secret, the truth about Ryan, everything I've been holding in for years. When I finished, Emily just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Jesus," she whispered. "You've been carrying that around this whole time?" I nodded, ashamed. "It's disgusting, I know. That's why I didn't tell you." But instead of recoiling, she took my hand. "It's not disgusting. It's painful, yes. But it's not your fault. None of it is your fault." For the first time, someone outside my family knew the truth. And instead of pity, I felt relief. A few weeks later, I got the call. It was Mom. Her voice was frantic, trembling. "It's Ryan," she said. "He's in the hospital." My heart stopped. Apparently, he'd been in a bad car accident. Broken ribs, collapsed lung, head trauma. It was serious. I should have felt nothing but anger. After all, hadn't he earned my resentment? But instead, all I felt was terror. Terror that he might die before I ever got the chance to tell him how I really felt. Emily squeezed my hand as I packed a bag. "Go," she said softly. And so I did. That night, as I drove back to my hometown, I realized something I'd spent years avoiding. I couldn't keep running from this. Not if I wanted to live a life that wasn't defined by bitterness and lies. Ryan might have been a coward when I was born. My mom might have made choices that scarred me. But they were still my family. And whether I liked it or not, I still loved them. The question was it too late to make peace? When I pulled into the hospital parking lot, it was nearly midnight. The fluorescent lights made everything look sterile, cold, unreal. My stomach churned as I walked through the sliding doors, wondering if I'd be too late. Mom was in the waiting room, pacing. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears and threw her arms around me. For the first time in years, I didn't push her away. "He's stable," she whispered. "But it's bad. They don't know if her voice cracked. She didn't need to finish the sentence. A nurse came out and told us we could see him for a few minutes. I felt my legs turn to stone as we walked down the hall. Ryan looked like a ghost. Tubes snaked out of his arms. Machines beeped softly beside him. And his face was pale, bruised, broken. Seeing him like that weak, fragile made something inside me shatter. For years, I'd carried so much anger, so much bitterness. But standing there, looking at the man who was both my uncle and my father, all I felt was grief. Grief for what we'd lost. Grief for the years we could never get back. I sat in the chair beside his bed and took his hand. It was warm, but limp. "Hey," I whispered, my voice breaking. "It's me, your son." The word felt foreign, strange but right. Ryan's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, he opened his eyes. "Kid." His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "Don't talk," I said quickly. "Save your strength." But he shook his head weakly. "Need to say this. I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving it all on your mom. For lying. For not being there." His hand tightened slightly around mine. "You didn't deserve that." Tears blurred my vision. "Why didn't you fight for me?" I asked. "I was scared," he admitted. 17. Dumb. Selfish. I thought I'd ruin your life if I stayed. So I told myself staying away was better. But it wasn't. It was just cowardice. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. "I love you," he whispered. "Always have. Even when I didn't know how to show it. You're the best thing I ever did." That broke me. The dam of anger I'd carried for so long finally cracked. And all that came pouring out was love and sorrow. "I love you too," I sobbed. "Even when I hated you, I still loved you." Ryan closed his eyes, exhausted, but a faint smile touched his lips. Ryan spent weeks in the hospital, recovering slowly. Mom and I took turns sitting by his side, an unspoken truce forming between us. For the first time, we actually truly talked. One night, while Ryan slept, Mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I know I failed you," she said. "I thought I was protecting you. But I see now I was protecting myself. I'm so sorry." I nodded, tears sliding down my cheeks. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I admitted. "But I want to. I don't want to carry this forever." "That's all I can ask," she whispered. For the first time in years, I hugged her. And this time, I didn't let go. When I returned to school, Emily was waiting for me. I told her everything: how Ryan had survived, how we'd finally spoken the truth, how it felt to finally say "I love you" to my father. She smiled softly, brushing away my tears. "You've carried this pain your whole life, but you faced it. That's strength." I realized then that I wanted her in my life forever. Not because she fixed me, but because she stood beside me as I learned to fix myself. A year later, Ryan came to my college graduation. He walked with a slight limp, but he was alive, and that was enough. When I spotted him in the crowd, he was grinning ear to ear, clapping louder than anyone else. For the first time, I didn't see my uncle. I didn't see the liar, the coward, the boy who ran from responsibility. I saw my father. After the ceremony, he hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, son." This time, I didn't flinch. I hugged him back and whispered, "Thanks, Dad." Life isn't a neat story with clean edges. There are still scars. I'll probably always carry some anger, some sadness for what could have been. But I've learned that the past doesn't define me. Yes, I'm the kid whose uncle turned out to be his dad. Yes, my family is messy and complicated and broken in ways most people can't understand. But I'm also the kid who faced the truth, who chose forgiveness, who refused to let bitterness be the only inheritance I carried. Now, when I think about the future, about having kids of my own, I don't feel afraid. I feel determined. Determined to give them the honesty I never had. Determined to show up every day without hiding, without shame. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: secrets may protect you in the moment, but they poison everything in the long run. And I refuse to pass that poison down. Sometimes, I still catch myself staring at Ryan, amazed by the strange, twisted truth of our bond. He's my father and my uncle, my biggest disappointment and my greatest source of pride. The man who hurt me most and the man who, in the end, taught me what it means to love unconditionally. Life doesn't give us perfect families. It gives us messy ones, broken ones, ones full of secrets and regrets. But if we're lucky, it also gives us the chance to forgive, to heal, to write a different story for ourselves. And that's what I'm trying to do every day.